Welcome to Conversations with David Ibarra. And today I'm honored to have as our guest, Scott Howell. Scott, welcome to the program.
Thanks, David. It's great to be here with you. I've heard so much about your podcast. I've actually listened to them. So you have one audience member, I know that.
Well,
so
I hope we have more than one, Scott.
Well, I think you have quite a few because someone else told me about it. But I've been really inspired on some of the guests that you've had.
Well, thank you. Now, I'm really excited to open up and to talk just a little bit about you and your history, because you're an individual that everybody knows that is heavily involved in politics in our state and our capital city. So if you would, give me a little background about who Scott Howell is, what's your passion, and what do you love doing when you wake up every morning?
Well, David, that's an interesting question because who I am, I'm probably just the normal kid on the block when you look back at it. My parents were school teachers. They were educators. I grew up in an education family. My grandfather had a ranch in southern Utah, in Castledale, Utah, where I spent every summer from the day I was born till even now I go down there. We herded cattle, and I learned so much about the farming methodologies that go on. And then, I was a product of Granite School District. I went to public schools. Skyline High School, played football there, got a scholarship, went to Dixie University, which we have now changed the name to Utah Tech on July 1. And then went on an LDS mission and went to England, which was a great experience. Got me out of the bubble, so to speak, for 2 years, which was really healthy. Came back.
And is that where you learned English?
That's where I used proper English. Hey, I got there in the first month, David. I was sitting there going, "What are you saying? I don't understand you." And so, yes, that's where I learned proper. Came back, finished up at the University of Utah, got married to Linda Skanke, wonderful wife and a Republican. I didn't know that for 15 years, but that was the way life was. And went to work for the IBM Corporation, lived all over the country, had a great experience with IBM. Started out as a sales rep, ended up as one of their executives on the West Coast. And during that trip, I decided to run for office because of education. Mm-hmm. We had moved from Georgia, IBM transferred me from Georgia back to Salt Lake. And when I enrolled my son in kindergarten, it was a disaster here. And if you can believe this, David, Georgia had full-time kindergarten, and this is 30 years ago. And they had a math specialist, a PE specialist, and a reading specialist. And they capped the classroom size at 18. This is Georgia. Wow. We moved here. They had 30 kids, half day. And so I got motivated to run. I ran, and then I got gerrymandered out of my seat after my second year. Thank you.
You must have been too good.
Yeah, I was something. And then I had to run again, and I was elected leader. And we went from 7 to 11. We were 4 away from the majority and had a great run up there. I said I'd serve 3 terms, and that's what I did.
And that was in the state Senate.
That was in the state Senate. And then I made a run for U.S. Senate against Orrin Hatch, and it was a wonderful experience. I lost, and IBM transferred me to California. I don't know if Orrin wanted me out of here or what, but lived in California for 7 years. Sacramento, right where you're from, and you and I have a lot of commonalities about that place.
My second hometown.
It is a great place. And then transferred me back, and I ran again against Orrin, and I didn't learn the first time, but the second time I learned. But so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Perfect.
4 kids, 4 boys, and our oldest son. You, my friend, have been such an example to him and an inspiration that your breadth and depth goes clear across the world, and you've inspired so many people. I know Brian has really appreciated the time you spent with him.
Well, great young man.
Well, thank you.
Tell me, everything that you've talked about here was serve, to serve, to serve, to serve in everything that you've done according to family, faith, community, health.
I've really appreciated family, faith, and community and health when you and I have had those conversations late at night or early in the morning.
Yeah.
True confession, we're probably up and before anyone else and probably not in bed until everyone else is done. But That's the thing I like about the Ibarra Group and what you've done in your book. It's so inspiring because, David, I think too often when we get in the executive world of business that we lose focus. We lose focus on family. We lose focus on health, or one of those. And those have been the attributes that you really have emphasized, and I think that's why your company has found the success it has, because it's a whole approach. It's organic, whole approach. It's not stay focused, and I've had a lot of colleagues at IBM that probably didn't see their families for 10 or 15 years.
Well, in the book, Stop Drifting, that you're referring to, that can be accessed at stopdrifting.com to purchase. But in that, we wanted to talk about conquering work, and that wealth and money isn't the most important things in our life, but it does give you the freedom to serve in family, faith, and community. And I think that both of us have learned that, and to make a mark, to make a difference is important. So let's transition into making a difference. And currently, right now, I got involved in some of your projects with the situation that we're experiencing in our capital city. And I make no, I'm not going to excuse myself for saying that not only are we not approaching it right, we're not approaching it, in my view, at all. And we've gotten to a point that our city is being lost. It's unsafe. It's not a place to raise your children. It's certainly not a place to have a business. And that's just not our capital city. Utah and Salt Lake City used to be the benchmark, and we've got to find our way back. Now, you're heavily involved in serving this homelessness situation, and trying to find a way, a dignified way, to help these poor men and women and children that have lost their way and are in the most difficult situation that ever could be imagined. And we've got to gain our compassion back. Tell me what you're doing in that area.
Well, when I was in the Senate, I actually appointed myself, since I was the leader, to the Social Services Committee. And that really started this whole venture of understanding better about homelessness and what we do and what we don't do. And over the years, I've learned a few things from it. And your articulation of what's going on in our capital city is absolutely right. In fact, it's following a pattern of what's happened in Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, Seattle, and it's a pattern that we don't want to get into. And David, at the end of the day, it's about leadership. It really comes down to that. Now, you're going to think that's a weird answer about how do we solve homelessness, but it is about leadership. We have built in this state some of the finest resources in the world. I call them the Taj Mahal. And we did that because at the time on the Rio Grande Street, we had the road home, which was an abysmal mess. You would not send your worst enemy there to spend a night. So we invested $65 million into these resource centers. Notice I didn't say a homeless center, resource centers. And over since we built these, we've had a challenge in terms of having the resource centers function like a resource center. They're back to their old way of just doing a homeless center.
A shelter,
just for a night.
An expensive shelter.
Oh, my gosh. Do you think Grand American's expensive? Yeah. You ought to see what we do for these people. And the cost equation on this, any business person would say, this is a failure from day one. So what I'm talking about, the leadership is, we have some individuals who think that it's compassionate to let people wallow in their own pity and their own human waste and eat unhealthy food, but they're free, and they say that's okay. And we see these encampments all over the city. Yes. I don't think that's compassion, David. I think that is turning a blind eye and not willing to take on the problem head on. And when you don't take the problem head on, what you do is wallow in grief. You wallow in the dignity of that individual is so low that they don't have any hope to come back up. And I do not think that's the answer. But that takes strong leadership to have someone go out and say, you know what? You can't camp here because we have space and we have laws. And if you want to be part of our society, you need to follow what we do.
Right.
And if you don't, guess what? This is probably not the place for you to be. Now, I certainly understand the compassion side of it. We have a lot of mental health in our community.
Yes.
There is no doubt we have a lot of addiction. There's no doubt. But the way to solve that is not to let them sit there and shoot up in their camps, or not to let them have psychotic experiences without mental health services. So what happened this year up on Capitol Hill is the governor put in his budget $120 million for deeply affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
The legislature said, "Thank you, Governor, but no thank you." They ended up giving them $55 million, which I applaud, and I'm grateful that they did that. But the caveat that we don't have when we talk about getting someone a home, you've got to have the wraparound services, else it doesn't work.
Right.
And that's like any other business. You have a business here and you have different tiers of management, and you're mentoring those other managers to someday take over your job. I mean, that's what a great leader does. But if you don't do the mentoring, you just wouldn't walk in and say, "Okay, Tyler, guess what? You get to be the CEO."
Right.
No, you have to have those skills of a great leader to do that. We don't have that in the homeless community right now. We have got to have mentors, what we call wraparound services for mental health and addiction and the other problems they're facing.
Let me just add is that one of the things is that I want our audience to really understand is I believe that you and I are really compassionate about the poor, absolute inhumane experience that folks that are going through, and it doesn't matter why they're there, and we have the responsibility to assist and to protect someone's right to sleep in the street who has an addiction or who has a mental illness, and not move them to a safe overnight area that does have a shower, that does have a restroom, but more importantly, that has a welcoming committee, whether it's law enforcement that's not dressed in their blues, but welcomes them and understands they may not get welcomed back. But if I welcome you 45 days and then one day you say, "Hey, Dave, you know what? Can I hear about that resource center?"
Right.
Until the desire to change is there, we got to help and protect. But also, the people that live here
absolutely
have a right. And children in Salt Lake City cannot go out and play at a pocket park by themselves. A parent would be irresponsible to let them go. That's not our Salt Lake anymore. But so we've got some services. But I wanted to just add that, you know, I don't know why it is right now we're experiencing, but in our Salt Lake City administration seems to me to spend more time saying why something can't be done. And I'll tell you, you and I in business, if we were interviewing somebody and they came into an interview and started to tell us all the reasons something wasn't going to occur, would we hire them for that leadership champion role? No.
You hire problem solvers.
Yes.
You want people who can look at the totality of the picture and then be able to go back in and find solutions. And it's hard work to find solutions.
And it starts off by existing. We do have a problem. Secondly, we're going to fix it.
Yes.
I don't know how yet, but we're going to fix it. And I'm seeding my subconscious. There is no other direction but to fix it. Let me ask you this. I know that our state and our city are not on the same page often. And it seems like sometimes our city takes great pride in being something different than the state. And the state looks at us like, whoa, for heaven's sakes. But a problem's a problem. If we could get to talk about the problem, both state, county, and city, problem solvers aren't Democrats, Republicans, independents. No. They're leaders that solve problems. That's what we've got to find. I don't know that we have that, but I'll tell you what, I sure hope and pray that our Mayor Mendenhall, and our city council, who I have great new hope for with the West Side.
They're amazing.
Victoria and Alejandro. Man, that's where the leadership is. They
right.
are not afraid to say, we got a problem, and we're going to fix it. And I hope that they maintain their separate voices and not fall under this false
one voice.
Yeah, one voice.
One voice.
That's not even that's not even democracy.
Could you imagine in business if we said, "Oh, we just have one voice and we don't have any outliers"?
Well,
I mean, Apple would have never happened.
That's not our democratic way either. But at any rate, I wanted to ask you. There was a bill I understood that passed 4B 40
HB 440
HB 44
right.
440.
Correct.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tell me about that bill.
Well, it was sponsored by Steve Ellison in the House, and it was a bill that tried to bring together all the service providers and deal with what we have on these overflow shelters. Every year we seem to get into this cycle of where we're trying to fight of who's going to put in an overflow shelter. In the last 4 years, we had an overflow shelter in South Jordan. We had one in Mill Creek, and Salt Lake City has taken the brunt of on 2 others. They had one in Sugar House, and then they had another one. And what happens is sometimes they don't get the zoning and all that put into place until February. And, here in Utah in November, it starts to get pretty cold.
Right.
So HB 440 was an attempt to bring together the whole Wasatch Front instead of South Salt Lake, Midvale, and Salt Lake carrying the brunt of it each year. And the bill now says that the mayors along the Wasatch Front have to get together and they've got to come up with a plan. If not, the state will implement a plan. And within that plan, it says that the state has land right authority, which means if there's a big box store, a Kmart, a vacant Kmart or something like that, or a Sears, and there is not a plan to deal with the overflow, the state can go in and by their authority take that empty building and say, we're putting that here.
Now, who is the head of that decision on the state representative side?
Former Senate President Wayne Niederhauser is the chair of the State Homeless Coordinating Committee. And that responsibility, and this clarified it in the bill, that responsibility to be back to them. He is the leader on it, and then the committee itself. It's co-chaired by Gail Miller and Whitney Clayton, former 70 of the LDS Church. And that committee then would have that responsibility to make that decision on where they're going to put that. I was in an event this morning with former President Niederhauser, and he told me that the mayors are paying attention. Troy Walker, the mayor of Draper, called him and said, hey, let's organize this now. And so the mayors are taking the lead on this.
Well, and the good thing is that now we have a majority. So if our mayor chooses to just point fingers and say it's the state, then in fact you'll be pointing the finger to the decision maker who will be making the decision, the state, because we didn't.
Exactly.
And we can do better. And I got a feeling that might be the first step to doing business, because it says we're going to do something.
Yes, it's not.
We got to do something.
Yeah, it's not may, it's shall.
Yeah.
And the word in there is very clear.
And you can't open it up just sharing statistics.
Exactly right.
You have to do something.
You really brought up a good point, because there's 2 other aspects of the bill. Then the one is accountability. They, in that bill, are required now to send in a monthly report about their activities and what they've achieved and what they've done. No more of this is how many socks we passed out. This is how many sanitary kits we passed out. Those measurements are gone. The measurements we want now is how many people did you get into a job? How many people did you get in mental health resources? How many people did you get into addiction? And that's an important piece on the bill. Another one that's really important on this legislation is that the places where they do have shelters, they have a mitigation fund. And public safety, many of these towns have been covering public safety through their own funding. But now there's $5 million that can be shared within those communities for public safety mitigation.
Cool.
In other words,
Yes.
You can now have, if the South Jordan Police don't have enough people to go and patrol a center, then they bring in the UHP. So there are teeth in the bill.
You know, I tell you, whenever we do a center, it's always been my belief that there should be 2 police officers walking, that neighborhood should become the safest neighborhood, not the neighborhood who drifts to an unsafe area. But I want to transition, if we will.
Well, can I just say one last thing real quick? Data shows that where there are homeless shelters without public safety emphasis, you have what's happened at the ballpark. You know, the woman who answered the door, the homeless guy, came in, slit her throat.
Yeah.
And the debauchery and the lawlessness that happened, no more.
Well, I tell you, when at nighttime, you know, I'm here late all the time. And at 9 o'clock, it just breaks your heart to hear what starts at 9 o'clock with the hollering, the screaming. And that hollering and screaming, profanity, is somebody that is in deep trouble.
That's right.
And when we were kids, we would have called 911, and our police officer that we knew would have come, and all of us been concerned. What happened, Scott? Today, that's just part of a metro. Yeah. That cannot be part of a metro. We have to
completely agree with you.
But I tell you what, we all come from somewhere, and I happen to believe, you know, we're all children of God, and he doesn't make junk.
No, he doesn't. And everybody is worth redemption.
And that's exactly right.
And hope. I've heard you talk many times about hope, David. You've talked about if you lose hope, then you've lost everything.
You've lost everything.
And I think those people that you hear screaming and hollering have lost hope, and they're crying out for help.
And some can't reason because of mental illness or drug addiction. And that's where a 72-hour a period where we can view and get assistance would be the humane thing to do. If it was our children, it would be what we do. But I get so tired of hearing reference to our friends. Our homeless friends. Well, if they're your homeless friends, I would never treat a friend that way. I would say, get in the car, let's go. You're coming home and with me.
Thank you.
Because that's not the way you treat a friend. But I want to transition. We're running out of time.
You did say one quick thing real fast. HB 394, it changed the holding from 24 hours to 72 hours, a person who's going through that.
Perfect.
And that passed on the governor's desk.
And let's make it clear. That's not for punishment.
No.
That is for, we've got to be able to view and to determine how can we help this poor soul.
Correct.
How can we?
Correct.
Well, I want to transition to a leader that I am just absolutely just love this guy, Joseph Grenny. And tell us a little bit about where are we with a person that comes up with a solution. You join the Other Side Village, and you have to have a commitment to be part of the community. And it is a program, and upon going through the program, you get access to a home. Tell us, where are we with the Other Side Village?
Well, we are in the process right now of requesting funding to help on that. The city they're almost done with the analysis to see there's 33 acres out on Indiana Avenue, and we just passed an EPA test out there on 8 acres.
Perfect.
So we are moving forward. 450 homes, tiny homes, 375 square feet. It's a village. Think of an HOA, because it's not going to have it's going to have one single ingress and egress. It is, as you said earlier, the accountability and the dignity of working this, based upon your income, is how much your rent will be. And if you don't have any income, then guess what? You have a responsibility. You'll either be in charge of the lawns, you'll be in charge of cleanup or snow removal, but there will be some service that you provide for that service of staying there.
And you gain dignity
of work. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now that needs to be rezoned. Where did we end up with that?
We hope to be before the council next month, and right now we have council support. The zoning is in place now.
Cool.
And the
Good.
city council will make that decision to have it completed. The planning commission gave it to, they threw it back to the council, which is fine. And so we hope that we could break ground as early as maybe in the fall on this.
Well, this is one area that I'm proud of Mayor Mendenhall, and I'm proud of our city council because it makes sense. And they're allowing somebody who has the specialized skills, a Joseph Grenny. And how is it that we change behavior? We've got to have desire, and then we've got to have hope, and then we gain dignity, and then we become a good neighbor.
Well, and David, I can't even begin to tell you how the Other Side Academy represents those very characteristics.
Yes.
They just opened up a brand new facility.
Yes.
It's a storage.
Yeah.
And how smart of them. They're the number one moving company. Now when you can store your furniture there, and they have these storage sheds. But, you know, in the continuum of care, and I want to make sure that people know this because you and I are both on the same page, the road home's important.
Yeah.
VOA is important.
Certainly.
All of these things are important. But when you want accountability and you want to see published results like any business that we'd have, I think the Other Side Academy sets the bar for everyone to follow, and it's okay for others to participate in. This morning I went out to Switch Point. They bought a hotel out there. They have 100 guests that stay there. Their average age of a homeless person in there is 72, and they're mostly old seniors that would be on the street if it wasn't for that. They have a zero drug policy. I mean, a zero tolerance on drugs. You have to participate in either cleaning your room or bringing the sheets down to the laundry. And it is a great, for Utah, we are setting the bar again for those senior homeless people that often are forgotten.
And it's about participating as a community member. But now on these homes, at the Other Side Village, they're starting a campaign to want to get folks that to assist with that. Do you know where they're at as far as the number of homes that have been purchased by business owners and donated, or do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I do. And they have right now a committed fund of well over $1 million+. Big shout out to your associate, the Murdoch Group and the Ibarra Group, who made a significant contribution. And you've set the bar and the example of what it means. You don't talk about it, you do something about it.
Well, you can have a program and you can bark and you can do whatever, but one of the things, as you know, Scott, I believe in putting my money where my mouth is.
I do know that.
And that is why I bought one home fully furnished and donated it to the Other Side Village, and so did my friend K.O. Murdoch. And I love working with Joseph Grenny. We did something similar with the Other Side Academy. Why? Business men and women. Listen to what I'm going to say. Business men and women. Don't just give your money to someone who's going to squander it. Find out who's doing good work and only give it to those folks that are doing good by it. And that's what I'm going to do. But we're at the end of our time.
It went too fast, David.
It went really fast.
We could talk about 1,000 other things. And
we sure could.
Your great example and your community service, and I hope you still have a political bone in you. I hope you consider of doing the ultimate jumping back in the ring again someday.
Well, I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. But I tell you,
you are.
Scott, I want to thank you for being on our program.
Oh, yeah.
And more importantly, I want to thank you for your friendship.
Well, my relationship with the Ibarras go way back. Everybody knows on this podcast David's brother Mickey, who was such a mentor to me, and the Ibarras have always been such great friends. And thank you for all that you do for the community. No one has a clue of what you do silently, but that's what makes great leaders.
Well, thank you very much, and that concludes this episode of Conversations with David Ibarra. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.